Okay, so this should be another relatively short video. I'm just trying to get into the swing of doing regular streaming. Hopefully, this is streaming. I've been having issues with OBS. Okay, seems like maybe it is. All right, so I did end up going back and at the end of the last coding video, I had accidentally bypassed code review, but I did go back and fix that. And I was realizing as I was reviewing the video that there are a couple of things that I don't like about this API already, even though it's really simple and bare bones. One is that I have, uh, just to back up, I'm creating a read it later style app that's going to essentially bookmark URLs so that I can read them later, or rather listen to them later. And based on what I was seeing in other APIs, I had this just a simple add article, delete article, archive article as the initial first step. But I'm realizing that I think what I want add article to do is record an intent in some work queue to download the article in the background and really return something more like a job ID so that I can, from the client, check to see if that job ID is done. And that will allow me to do a few things. One is to do additional processing that might take a little bit longer uh, in the background. Things like, maybe running some sort of AI workflow, categorizing or understanding or comprehending the article, and maybe less fantastical than that is simple things like um, changing the article so that it's more appropriate for something like reader mode, getting rid of ads and things that don't really make sense in or a read it later style format. So it seems like there will be some workflows there. And rather than having add article kind of return, initially I was thinking it would return essentially the database ID of like the article that's inserted into the database. I may want to change how that's done. The lead article is probably fine, although I'm not sure I want to commit to having just like an N64 as the ID. Maybe I'll leave that for now. I don't know. And another relatively minor thing is that I should have some sort of protobuf package statement so that I can do things like have versioning. So I'm going to mark this up a little bit. I don't know if I can. Can I not add a comment here? What's going on? I need to log in. Let me pause the login. Maybe I'll just do that over here. Okay, I assume that was successful. Okay. So somewhere around here, I should have a package statement. Add a comment. Not sure why everything is so zoomed in. And then here, I'll just say, this seems like the add article is going to synchronously update the database and return a database ID. Are you sure you don't want a more asynchronous API? And another thing I realized is that I don't need to send things like title and author from the client, because really all I should be sending is the URL. If the title and author are not contained in the document that's in the URL, then I don't for at least for this initial version, I don't care about that. So and I'm not going to frequently be overriding whatever is in the URL. So there may be more stuff I have to do to there may be common issues where I need to set title and author separately. But for now, I'm not sure that this is the way to do things. So I'll just say, are you sure you need title and author? Can you retrieve them? I'll say from the HTML document. And then I'll say, what's the plan here? You're intending on using a bare database row keys. All right, so I've marked it up. I don't know how useful that is, because I think what I'm going to do is just submit it as is and make the changes in a follow-up. Except for this, I guess I'm going to go ahead and add a package statement. Oh, 2 of 2. Okay. So I have drafts. How do I send them? I forget if I did it before. It's changes in edit mode. Wait, I didn't actually want to +2 that. Can I change my code review? I mean, the thing that I'm running up against is I'm the reviewer and the author. So I will add a package statement here. How do I do that? I think I get some code editor here. I'll just call it like leafcutter dot v0 or something. Foo.bar. Seems fine for now. I don't know what save and publish is. Publish edit. Okay. I think publish edit is what I wanted to do. So now I can say this is done. And then under this one, I'll say I'll take another crack at it and a follow up. Commit. And this is just so I can have a record of my thoughts and taking notes on the things. So I'll revisit the database ID thing in the next go around, and that's all fine. All of that is fine. And I guess I can do code review +2 and submit. Oh, I need to say that these are resolved. I forget. I think I just need to click resolve under them. Right? Something like this. All right, resolving. Okay, so now this is merged. I think that I might have left the Git repo here in a bad state. Let me just check. Maybe not. What's my status? Okay, seems good. Now let's take another crack at editing this. I think that what I want to do is, instead of add article, I want to have an RPC like what do I want to call it? I guess maybe calling it add article is fine. You can get rid of title and author for sure. Article ID I think is wrong, but I'm gonna make a I'm gonna make a message called an article fetch job, and it's gonna have a probably in32 is fine. I don't know. I'll call it job ID. It should probably be scoped to a specific user, so that I can do things like enumerate all jobs for a given user. But I don't think that needs to be in the protobuf message. And maybe we'll just start with our article fetch job. No. So we'll call it add article, I guess. And the thing that add article response will return is a article fetch job. Maybe fetch underscore job. And something like this. And then maybe our comments here, are the C++ comments? I'm going to add article request. Does the following. One is it will add the article metadata to the database. That'll be 2. So one is it's going to yeah, no, okay, yeah. So one is it's going to register the intent to of the user, calling user to consume the article. So it's gonna go into like the list, the like playlist of things that you want to read, The other thing it's going to do is schedule a job to fetch the article and do any necessary post-processing. So right away, it will record the intent that like let's say I want to read an article about Batman or whatever, and it's going to ensure that the app knows that I want to read about Batman. That's one. And the other is it's going to actually fetch the Batman job, and those things are independent because, or not entirely independent, but they're somewhat independent because, like let's say there's a crash right after the it 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 right after it records that I want to consume the article, then the article or its metadata will be stored in the playlist somewhere, but the corresponding backing data, the actual HTML that I need to look at to read the article, won't be there. And correspondingly, if I first scheduled the job to fetch the article and then it crashed, then the system wouldn't really know that the user, me, actually wants to read that article. It would fetch the article, but it wouldn't necessarily add it to anything. So I think that these are reasonably separate steps. And then I'll say the fetch job, I'll say an identifier for the fetch job is returned to the client. And the other reason that I want something more like this is that I'd like to be able to support situations where you have instead of in the normal setup, we have a client such as a mobile phone and the back end, which is existing on the cloud somewhere, let's say. In a normal setup, the client and the back end would synchronize the articles. This is what, for example, Wallabag and I think probably Pocket and Instapaper do. But I also want to be able to support a setup where there's some independent client-only backing store. So, for example, if you've ever done any traveling that's a little bit off grid, where maybe internet connectivity is spotty or expensive, for example, in some parts of the world, then it would be nice to be able to take, for example, an entire Wikipedia dump and have that be able to serve as the backing store for this source of articles. And so having the ability to register the intent separately from fetching the job from fetching the content allows you to separate those further in the future for having an offline only or offline first mode. Okay, and then we're just going to send back the job ID. Now, in theory, I need to add a bunch of stuff like polling for whether the job is done. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel there. I think that there's probably other stuff that's already written that will let me reuse it. So I'm not going to like sketch out an article fetch API just now. I'm going to leave it as something that I need to do in the future. And maybe I'll add that as a to-do. I'll need to flesh out, I'll have to check job status, etc. So Google does have, so like protocol buffers does have something called like a long running operation. I think that a long running operation is for operations that are intended to be finished while the connection is still established. I think that's probably okay. Like I'm not sure the client really cares. Like if you tell it that you want some article, and then you close the client, the time it takes to fetch that job isn't really going to be long enough to justify like next time the client wakes up, checking that the job actually completed. If there's an incomplete job, that should show up maybe in a database sync or something like that. But I think it's fine for the client to assume that the backend is going to do its job and finish that. So maybe potentially I'll say change this to a long running operation. All right. And let's see if this compiles. All right, it seems to compile. So I assume that means it's valid proto stuff. How much time do I have? Maybe if I have time, let's take a look at protocol buffers. See if I can find long running operation. Some sort of best practices. Manages long running operations with an API service. When an API method normally takes long time. Could this be takes a long time? When an API method normally takes long time to complete, it can be designed to return operation to the client. And the client can use this interface to receive a real response asynchronously by polling the operation resource or pass the operation resource to another API. So this is a cloud thing. I'm not sure if these are protos that that I have access to, but we'll find out. This manages long running operations with an API service. We have get operation request returns operation, and you can list the operations. Yeah, this might be overkill. I'm not sure. And you know what? I'm not even sure. Well, maybe just so I don't have to import that, I'll have one more RPC for is job done. And then is job done, we'll just have a job ID. And the response will just be a Boolean. But, you know, I'm not sure. I'm feeling this is not going to be great. But I think that's fine. His job done response is not found. Okay, so now we can query whether a job is done. And is there anything else? Yeah, I guess while we're here, we want to be able to update reading progress on an article. So let's add one more. So update reading progress. So we'll have this update reading progress request, and we're going to return an update reading progress response. We could have a general update, like metadata thingy, but I think it's a little bit cleaner to have something specific, since right now all we know that we're going to frequently update is the reading progress, and that's going to be updated as you read the article. And actually, so I don't have to type these all again, let me just grab them. And I'll put them here. Subword mode. And I guess I never really made a strong decision about how I'm going to identify an article. Part of me doesn't want to use an N64, but I also don't really want to introduce another like nested proto. So maybe N64 is probably fine. I do want to think about things like privacy. Like it would be nice to not have it be visible from the article IDs that, you know, maybe IDs that are clustered next to each other, you might be able to infer that those were added by the same user. I would like to have that not be the case, but certainly for an initial version, that's not a huge concern, and we can always somehow obfuscate how, like, what the actual integer is that's being sent and passed around. And so to update the reading progress, we'll have some article ID. This is the article that's being updated. And I would think int32 should be fine for the offset. Although, so I could ask how long. So int32 is what? It's first of all, I could do unsigned. Does protobuf have unsigned ints? I forget. So this is about encoding. I guess let's not be so stingy. Let's just use an N64. So I'm going to use I'm going to have two cursors, I think. One for kind of where you are in the article as it's being read, and maybe also where you are in the article as, sorry, in the first case, it's going to be like where you are in the article as as it's being read to you, because the idea is that there will be a voice reading the article in the general case. As for, and then this creates a sort of the ability to dissociate between the thing that's being read on the by the voice and the thing that's showing on the screen. And certainly on a client or front end, I want those to be able to be different so that you can, like, let's say you're listening to something with a table, that you can continue listening forward while scrolling back to a table so that you can give a closer look at it. Because what happens with apps like Pocket, I think, and Wallabag is that if you try to scroll back to look at something you saw previously, then because they're only keeping track of one cursor, the table scrolls out of view as soon as the voice reads the next thing. So I don't want that to happen. But I don't think we need to save those two things on the back end. I think we only need to save one progress indicator. And I'll just call that progress indicator offset. And it'll be offset of reading position from the start of the HTML document. Maybe I'll call it progress offset. That seems a little bit more clear. And then now that I think about it, I don't want it to be easy to accidentally try to set a negative offset. That seems like a bad idea. And maybe I do want signed integers. Oh, it's just, yeah, uint. Okay, we'll call it uint. And similarly, I think all of these int64s should be uint64s. And that will be fine for now. And then for the, I'm not going to submit it, I guess. I'll just say sketch out some potential changes for improving V0 lector API. And the basic ideas are allow for some synchronicity, asynchronicity of the fetcher, so that the client doesn't asynchronously wait. So the client doesn't like block on the article being fetched. And I can tell that this is what some of the other that for some of the other read it later services, the client does block on it getting fetched, which is a problem because not infrequently the fetching is slow, like for a longer article, or the fetch fails, and so the client just kind of like waits for a long time. So that's the, this isn't just complexity for the sake of complexity. This is, I've seen other people do it the way I was about to do it, and I wasn't entirely happy with how that feels to the user. Add it, then I'll say I'm going to add a simple job API, although I'll say it might be better to reuse something. It would be nice to reuse an existing library, although there's also a lot of virtue to keeping your dependencies minimal. And, you don't want to, if you go too far on trying to reuse other people's code as much as possible, that's how you end up with like left pad as a service. And you don't want to do that. So, you have to somewhere in between having a simple fetch job and adding a complete like job queue service, somewhere in there is when you would start reaching for something off the shelf. I don't know which would be simpler, but I guess I'll try this just for hacking something together quickly. And the third point was what? Add the ability to update. then I'll say, well, the front end, we want to differentiate between audio and visual cursors. It's not clear that both need to be stored on the back end. So for now, at least, we just store a single primary cursor. All right. And then in theory, if I remember how to push correctly, I do that. And let's verify that I've done this. Yeah, okay. All right, cool. So I'll leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow for hopefully I'll get to finally start sketching out at least some handlers for this RPC service. And then once I have some handlers, I can begin implementing some of the actual behavior, possibly some tests, and then eventually hook it up to a database and write a front end.